Welcome to Beyond the Balance Sheet, the podcast where we go beyond numbers to tell the real stories behind money. Every financial decision you make carries a story, a dream, a lesson, and sometimes even a struggle. Here, we explore the choices that shape lives, the emotions tied to wealth, and the insights that lead to success. This episode is brought to you by Vuka Investment Club, Kenya's first wealth tech platform, helping you invest in resilient, secure, profitable, and regulated real estate.
Money. Sometimes we think about it, sometimes we worry about it. It's something that we work for. It shapes our decisions, it fuels our ambitions. Believe it or not, it's something that controls a big part of our lives. Now, what happens when money is not just about a figure in your bank account? When it now takes on a deeper, involvement in your life in terms of anxiety, when it becomes a source of stress, when it becomes a source of even trauma. Now, two people could be having the same paycheck, but they have completely different emotional reactions when it comes to saving, spending, and investing. Two people could react differently. One feels guilty when they're spending, while the other one spends recklessly just to feel something. Could it be that our past affects our relationships with money, childhood experiences, how we struggle with financial hardships, or even the expectations that culturally are expected upon us? Now, today we're going to be diving into the relationship between money and mental health. And this is something that I believe needs to be talked more about because a lot more of us are experiencing this. Joining me for this discussion, we have Sakina Taki, who is a specialist who will be taking us through some of the things that we need to look out for when discussing money. Now, whether you've undergone financial and you've experienced financial anxiety, or even stress, or even just want to build on your mental health and money relationships, this is the conversation that you need to join. I'd like to invite Sakina. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Please tell us a bit about yourself as we get into the show.
Sure. So I founded a company called Impasto Ventures. And Impasto Ventures focuses on mental wellness for corporates and communities because they all coexist in the same space. The crux of what we do is suicide prevention. So we say that we champion suicide prevention in the company.
Okay, wow. That's such a deep thing that you do there. I think you're the right person for this discussion because we're talking about mental health and we're going to be diving into even the aspect of suicide, how, all of this is involved in this discussion. So my first question is maybe, why does finance have such a strong impact on our mental health? Why do our finances have that kind of impact?
Well, the world we live in today, look at the consumerism. Look at the capitalism that goes on in our society. Money, finance is a very big part of it. Mm-hmm. Without it, there's no education. Living standards are very low. So obviously, money, finances will have a very big impact on our physical health, mm-hmm. our emotions, on our well-being, on our mental health. Yes.
All right. So I'm just trying to, decipher the difference between just normal financial stress and financial trauma. Maybe could you speak a bit into that? And maybe what are some of the things for me to just pick up? How do I know that I'm undergoing financial trauma and not just financial stress?
Very interesting question. And I'd start by highlighting, some stats for mm-hmm. financial stress. Mm-hmm. So the World Bank published a fintechs in mm-hmm. 2021 that indicated that 63% of adults in developing countries go through financial stress, while in the developed world, there are about 33% of adults who suffer the same. Now, this is financial stress. Mm-hmm. How do we know if financial stress is now financial trauma? One, you look at the time span of what is bothering you. If you have to pay a bill by the mm-hmm. end of the month, mm-hmm. there will be some financial stress. Mm-hmm. It's short term. But when you talk about trauma, trauma is more inbuilt. Trauma has a trigger. And I'll give you an example. You have to pay rent by the end of this month.
Yeah.
And you are stressed about filling in that specific amount. Now, trauma is when you remember that there was once in my childhood, we had to move into a smaller apartment, a smaller home, or we were kicked out because my parents did not fulfill the amount of rent. Now, that kicks in when you say, now, what if I can't fulfill it? Will my kids go through the same thing? Will the pattern, come again? How will I deal with it? So you go into overthinking mode.
So and trauma doesn't necessarily mean it's something that started with me. So no. My background could have some impact.
Oh yes. Trauma is more inbuilt.
Okay.
It's more within. So trauma is something that will take you back to thinking about this is what happened, this could happen, and you quickly go into overthinking mode. So what if this pans out this way, then this will happen. If I can't fill my rent in, then, oh my God, what about my kids? Will we be kicked out of the house? Do I automatically have to start looking for other options? So this is when you know that your stress is something that is triggered from a trauma. Trauma may also come when you've been through tough financial situations, such as the COVID-19, when all of a sudden people lost their jobs. And now there's a sort of a fear. Every time you hear there's an influenza or people are falling sick, you're very quick to look for security, to stop spending, because that was a very traumatic period for very many people in terms of finances.
I think it's good that you mentioned COVID because, I have had the pleasure of, doing a lot of coaching to different people. And you realize that many of the conversations, many of the financial problems started when COVID happened. And they realized that life could actually stop. We were living in a very quick, rat race before COVID happened. And somebody comes is when they realized, I didn't have enough spending. I didn't have enough savings. I had too much debt. And now this person is coming to you trying to rebuild their life. Maybe they were chased out of their house. Maybe their children had to change schools totally. Yes. Maybe their house was repossessed. And I'm just trying to think, is it that our financial stresses just sometimes accelerate some of the things that we've already gone through? And now they become trauma and we're not aware of it. And now we still keep them as stresses that we need to deal with. And so where I'm going with this question is sometimes I go to a coach, a financial coach, trying to teach me about, managing my finances when I should actually be seeing somebody else, a therapist or something like that to handle my trauma. What's your opinion on this?
Again, that's a very interesting question because financial trauma will only come out when they start financial coaching.
Okay.
Right? So you're a financial coach. And if I come to you and I talk to you about trying to sort out my finances because I have been bankrupt in my business once, and I sit, and then you're seeing, but her financials are pretty okay. Okay, check. Let's do some certain activities. Then you realize, actually, there was a traumatic event that she has gone through. So the scary part for her, or it's not that she's unstable in business, but is this specific trauma that has triggered it. What is the trigger? And once you identify the trigger as a coach, and because I am a mental health coach as well, we have to be very quick in suggesting that this is where our specialty ends and a therapist needs to take over. So very nicely, you explain to the client that, you know what, we have actually, uncovered that there is trauma. So I suggest that the best thing to do right now is why don't you speak to a therapist, have certain sessions with them to make sure that this trauma is now well either eradicated or when it does come up, how do we cope? Because it is all about having a positive coping mechanism. A lot of the people who go through financial trauma will be linked to using a certain substance, whether it is a hard drug or it's just nowadays e-cigarettes because they're so easy to use around in the office.
Alcohol as
well. Yeah. But that is a coping mechanism. You're using that substance to cope with your emotion. So now the therapist will turn this into a positive coping mechanism. How about you go to the gym before you go to the office? This way you'll be able to release your frustration. How about before you start your day in the office, gather your team and do a 5-minute mindfulness technique. This way, not just you, but everybody in the office will be able to cope better. So for the therapist is to deal with the trauma. For us is to detect, is it the trauma? If it's stress, how can they deal with it? How can they be cushioned financially? I hope I answered your question.
Yes. And I'm just trying to think, in the African culture, we tend to think that seeing a therapist means your life is falling apart.
Very true.
We are very particular about talking about mental health. Like, it's not a topic that many of us would openly come out and say, guys, I'm struggling. And that's why we get to, experience suicide cases coming up, because somebody has no outlet. There are no safe spaces for them when it comes to that. So how can we encourage guys to, come out and talk about their mental health more? Because there's also pressure for, in society, there are roles for men and women, and the man is the head of the house, as they say. So they have to take the punches. They have to take the punches in terms of providing for the house. How do we make it something that people can discuss? And in our different coaching fields, how do we bring it out?
So interesting you stated that. We normally say that the man is the head of the house, but the woman is the neck that turns them.
I like that.
And it's very true that financial crisis and financial situation pushes mostly men to suicide. And if you look at the suicide rates, even in Kenya, you have, to every one woman we lose 4 men. Wow. And a lot of them are heavily linked to financial crisis. I think the first thing I'd like to tell everybody listening to this podcast is let us drop the veil of illusion. What is this veil of illusion? A lot of the times you're sitting, stressed, don't know what to do. You go on Insta and somebody has gone to Diani.
Oh, yes.
Somebody is flying somewhere.
Our life is always good.
Yeah, their life is always good.
Yeah.
And you sit there in judgment of yourself first, saying, how is it that this person is making it so far? And what am I doing wrong? But remember, they will not come on Instagram and show you what they have been through.
Yeah.
Maybe how much they have saved to be able to take this trip with the family. So don't live in the illusion that you are a failure, that you are wrong. Also, when we meet in circles, again, very highly in men's circles, because you want to show, this is my business. I closed this deal. Let us not do that. But let us have constructive support groups whereby you say, you know what, I grew my business by 10% and this is how I did it. I met a coach, the coach helped me, or let us have a friend support group once a month, whether it's men or women, and let us call a coach. Let us call a coach for 1 hour to have a financial session with us to see if they are new ways of saving, of growing our money. What exactly is it? If there are ways that we are used to spending money in our businesses, what is it? Can we use technology now to be able to probably save more? AI. Can I be able to save more time? That will save me more money. So let us try and bring into spaces prevention. Bring in a coach to speak to a group. What happens when you're doing a group is that everybody will take your number. I'm sure you've given many talks. Everybody takes your number.
For sure.
They might not approach you that day, but 2-3 days later, they give you a call on the side to say, hey, you know what? Let's meet for a coffee. And that's what you need. Destigmatizing the fact that we are all going through a situation, whether it is, and you mentioned very well, we both may earn the same paycheck, but your responsibilities may be way higher than mine. You might be having a bigger family. You might be having somebody who needs medical attention. What compared to me, I'm supporting myself. So our lifestyle is very different. And you will always wonder, why is it that she will be able to afford XYZ when I can't? So let us destigmatize talking about it, one. Let us use support groups, number 2. And let us know who we are calling. Don't call people who are going to rant about their success. Call people who are going to teach you what to do, how to intervene in a crisis.
That's all good. But we're in a society where I feel most of us have something, in terms of mindset, we have a scarcity mindset. And scarcity mindset, what it does is I feel like I'm competing with everyone. Like there's not enough to go around. If I share what I have, you'll do much better than me. If I share what I have, you'll get the next client as opposed to me. And I find this such a hindrance to us because it means I can't share where I'm failing, where I need help. So we've talked about the mental health. What are some of the things that happen when you have mental health? But now, when it comes to money, things like depression, anxiety, ADHD, how do they actually affect our financial decisions? Maybe you can talk on that.
So obviously, when you have a mental health condition, and I'd like to start by saying, please don't self-diagnose, right? Just because you're going through a short-term stressful period doesn't mean you have anxiety. Go get yourself screened from a professional. If I have a cough today and I tell you I have COVID, and you're like, but who told you? Did you take a test?
You use Google sometimes.
You use Google. You're a Google doctor. Yeah. So first of all, go and see a specialist, a counselor who is going to help you screen. Secondly, obviously, when you have a mental condition, a mental health condition, that is anxiety, depression, or as you've stated nowadays, a lot of adults are finding out that they have ADHD. Decision-making hinders a lot. Imagine a person in the state of anxiety or anxiously making a financial business decision. You might go into a project very fast because you're scared of losing that particular project, or you might fear the outcome. So you might stop yourself from progress. So having a mental health condition will highly affect your decision making. A person who is going through depression, a lot of the times they're sleep deprived. They feel like a failure. Now, coming from a perspective like that, I just want you to imagine how decision-making will be affected, and common decision-making of confidence in a boardroom, carrying out a presentation. How will that project on the company? How will that project on you as an individual professional? So we really need to ensure our mental wellness is a balance. Nobody is perfect. We have days when we're good, where we have days when we aren't. But where can we look for that balance where we know that, you know what, today I'm feeling a bit anxious. Maybe these decisions, let me leave them or let me do a mindfulness exercise or an activity that will put me in a neutral stance when making a decision. I think that is very important.
Okay. We have this thing called retail therapy.
Yes.
Where I go and, I enter a supermarket, buy something to feel good. Or maybe I buy for myself a holiday to go and feel nice. Or on the other extreme end, we have somebody who feels guilty when spending money, even when they can afford it. So I'm just asking, how do we know whether it's trauma or we're just making bad decisions about our money and financials?
When it comes to retail therapy, and we glorify it a lot, you have to realize we live in a capitalist society. A lot of toxic consumerism. Convenience plays a very big role. Before, where I had to walk into a store to buy a dress, I can do that today lying down in my bed, and in half an hour, there'll be a Buddha guy at my door with my delivery. It's so convenient. And that's why retail therapy becomes easier. But we really need to be mindful. If you meet a nutritionist, they'll talk to you about mindful eating. If you eat without the television on your table, you will be able to focus on what exactly you're eating. Just like that, when you look at an item, consider your chain of hierarchy for the month. Do you need this particular item? Make a list of things that you might require in your house. And this will really help you to budget. A very good example, or something that I have used and I find very useful, is the working in percentages. So as a company, if I am going to make a certain amount, I will use a certain percentage to invest back in the company. It could be buying new furniture for my office. It could be doing a training session. So why don't we utilize the same, the same policy with our savings, with our salary? Today, if you have a money market fund and you, on a daily basis, nowadays you can see your daily, your daily percentages or your monthly percentages. After 6 months, if my finances grow to a certain amount, I will withdraw 5% and I will enjoy with that 5%. So I think being mindful about your spending will really help you control this, what we are calling retail therapy. Remember, again, I emphasize on coping mechanisms. If you're telling me that's what makes you happy, how can you change that? How can you change that to have a healthier coping mechanism, especially when you know you cannot afford something? Talking about people, they say the rich get richer by saving their money. And a lot of the times we think that they're more stingier. But we also have to realize that people who are slightly held back with their cash, or people who don't spend, again, there is a financial trauma. They have coming from a background where you probably couldn't afford a pair of shoes, and coming to a space where now you have so much money that you can buy whatever you want. But is that really a wise thing to do? So are we calling them stingy because according to us, they should be dressed in a brand?
Okay.
Mark Zuckerberg, how many brands have you seen the guy wearing?
I think his t-shirts, trademark.
Right? How many brands will you see today if you walk across just the town in Nairobi? But who is richer?
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
So wise spending, making sure that you're mindful about what you do, that is very important.
So then, to what point does one's personality come in? All right, because sometimes somebody could say that's just how I am, that's my personality, and they blame it on that. For example, the sanguines, for example.
Yes.
You find a sanguine is always out to, they're known to be people pleasers, kind of like that. And one of the things that I always say that it's more expensive to pretend you have money than actually having money. So I'm like, at what point do personalities also play a role when it comes to, our mental health and our financial decisions?
We do a lot of personality tests for corporates, especially during our team building sessions. Yeah. And they play a very, very big role because also mental health conditions will be attached to certain personalities. Somebody who's extroverted might be very anxious, or somebody who is perceived to be extroverted might have certain conditions. Now, we can have excuses, right? I'm sure you've always heard if somebody does something and they're like, oh, it's because I'm a Gemini.
Yes. It's like it's a get out of jail card.
Yeah. And now what are we supposed to do about that? So again, it's all in personal perspective. Do I want to make a change in my life, or do I want to use an excuse? Again, our society glorifies when you do something out of the norm or something that's not normal. I'll give you an example. You have two kids in the house. One is quiet and shy, and one is extremely naughty. And you will realize the family will glorify the naughty one, quoting it as cuteness. He did this, he said this. And the shy person is always kind of shunned away. So are we glorifying these habits of retail therapy? Because we're giving it a fancy name. It's therapy. But is it really therapy?
Absolutely
So
not.
let us stop glorifying something that is damaging ourselves. When you can afford it, when there is an event coming up, maybe your birthday, Christmas, obviously you don't live, you don't work not to enjoy it, right? But if it is hurting your pocket, if it is hurting your family, then is it really right for you to take your personality as an excuse? The point of knowing your personality is knowing the disadvantages and advantages of your personality. Yeah. And when you know this is my disadvantage, now this is where you go to the coach and say, actually, for me, I get my salary like this and it's gone.
Yeah.
So what can we do about it? So take your personality, look at the disadvantages, and work on it for a better future.
Okay. I like that, what you're saying. You touched a bit about, your past experiences could, influence your current relationship with money today. I'd like to just go back to a bit of that and just shed more light on it. Maybe we can have a discussion on it. Somebody who's grown up in an environment, two kids, for example, one grows up from a well-off family, and what they see is their parents splashing money, and that's what they do. And when they grow up, they pick up this habit. And on the other side, there's somebody who grew up in not such a good environment, where maybe they were moving from house to house, maybe because being chased with landlords by landlords and all for not paying the rent and all. So how does one start healing from that so that they can now make good financial decisions as an adult?
That's a good question. And I'll tell you something. As you're growing up, three things are very important: financial education, financial literacy, and parental education.
Okay.
So you might mention somebody from a rich family where they've seen their parents just splurging money. And it's so much that you've never felt that you've lacked something. There is no lack. What happens with such individuals as they grow up is they believe that it will always be there. So when they go through a financial crunch, losing shares in their businesses, a dip, a financial dip, it is extremely hard for them to be able to lower their standards of living. And I'll give you a very good example. We've had a really big dip in our financial sector with some banks closing down suddenly, and families were hit big.
Yeah.
And it's come to 10 years now, but people are still trying to recover from that, not because maybe they haven't recovered financially fully, yes, but because they're still hanging on to that standard of living. When they had to probably make a decision 9 years ago of changing their lifestyle.
Yeah.
And somebody who comes from a background that is not very privileged, you will see as they grow up, they're more stern with their money. And that is also because they don't want the cycle to be repeated. But we all have to remember that we need to come to a point where you're not splurging. And if you're splurging, what exactly are you splurging on? You might have countless bank accounts, but are you spending it in the right way? Are you investing, or are you spending it on substance? You might come from a background that's not very privileged, but as you grow up and you're financially stable, are you utilizing those finances properly? Sometimes seeing a figure in your bank, you feel very happy. But is that money growing? Or can you now invest it in property and multiply it? So again, it's not about having the money. It's about the financial literacy of knowing how to multiply it. How are you going to create generational wealth for your coming generations? I think that is very important for both sides of the coin to have a look at.
Okay. Wow. You touched a bit on financial crisis. And right now we are in a bit of a financial crisis. In Kenya, or even Africa generally, with the new administration in the US, the donor funding that we were very accustomed to. We were, in fact,
handouts.
I dare say entitled to,
Yes.
was cut.
Yeah.
And now we have so many people out there looking for jobs.
Yes.
People who thought that this funding would never stop coming, all of a sudden has stopped. This stop in funding is also affecting other sectors. It's not only the people in the development world. The hospitality sector is also struggling. Even the taxes, the government will feel it.
Highly.
But now on the street, this person who always thought money will always come in next month, how would you advise such people? Because right now, they say when times of difficulties, when you are truly exposed in terms of how mentally secure were you. How do we talk to these people? How do we, encourage them?
So a couple of things. Every generation you speak to will say they went through a financial crisis. Every generation faces their hardships. But how ready are we to face the crisis is the question. So first, I would focus and emphasize on financial literacy. Education is one thing. We can all go to school. But were you taught how to file your taxes in school?
No.
Were you taught how to multiply your money? You go to school with the notion of you will get a good job, not become an entrepreneur.
Actually, the thing is this. When we are managers of corporate finances, director of finance, I manage that money with excellence. But when it's my personal money, there's totally different.
You know why?
Yeah.
Because you're responsible and answerable to somebody else. But when it's your own, who are you answerable to?
To myself.
Exactly. So when you have a coach, then what happens?
Yeah.
On a monthly basis, who are you submitting your returns to? Who are you discussing your financials with? And that's why a coach is very important.
Yeah.
And they teach you then on long term how to manage it on your own. But again, for the people on the streets, I would say I mean, when COVID hit, yes, there was a massive crisis. But how did the gig economy kick in?
Yeah.
How did people change and start, those
Online.
people online?
Yeah.
Yes. How many knew Zoom before
Oh,
COVID?
man.
Teams.
I remember those times.
Right?
Yeah.
And I say it was such an opportunity for the people who took the opportunity. Today, I train on a course called the Suicide First Aid course. I can provide it to the entire Africa. And that is only because this online platform has really opened up due to, events like the COVID-19. Yes, it was tragic, but it did teach us something. We have technology. So now when you're sitting, what skill are you picking up on the street? Are you looking at something that will make you a profit today and 5 years down the line? When you're maybe picking up a skill, how are you taking that skill and making it your USP? You can be a driver, but you can be a driver who provides somebody a bottle of water when they come in.
Yes.
What is your USP? And that's what I would like everyone to take a minute and think about. As an entrepreneur in my company, what is our USP? And always be 5 steps ahead of the game. If you have that unique selling point about yourself, whether it's on the street, even when you're buying your vegetables, there's so many vendors, but you will go to that one vendor. Why? What is that person's USP? Is it the way they're talking to you? Is it that they'll probably give you 1 tomato for free? So what is your USP? And build on that USP. I'd also like to encourage people to look at how to multiply your money in smaller ways.
Okay.
Now, I haven't been paid to say this, but recently there was, we celebrated Eid.
Yes.
And this is a very good example of financial literacy for kids. And I was really thinking, I have nephews. One is in uni, one is about 15, 16, the other one is 11. And I was really thinking, how can I gift them something that will teach them, but also help them? And I really thought, and one of my friends advised me to open them ZD accounts on Safaricom.
Okay.
Who doesn't know how to use M-Pesa?
Everyone uses M-Pesa.
Exactly. And what I did is I started their investment with 3,000 shillings. You can start it with 1,000. And I told them, on a monthly basis, the minimum amount you have to put in is 100 bob. That happened. So we did this last week. Yesterday, we opened the account and everybody was so happy to see their money grow.
Oh, wow.
And now their perception of money has changed.
Yeah.
And I tell them, before you go to Java, or before you go to have that milkshake, now imagine putting that 200, 300 bob in this.
In there.
Imagine it growing the other week. That is teaching them how to multiply their money, not just putting it in a piggy bank. So how are we taking this information on the street? And telling them, this is possible. You will see your money grow in bits and pieces. And then how do we make sure they're not stingy? So I told them, after 6 months, whatever you make from your profit, we're going to withdraw 10%. And we'll all go and buy something for ourselves. So are we doing that with our kids? Because school is not going to teach them that. School is going to teach them how to keep accounts.
Yeah. How to evaluate companies.
Exactly.
And do the big math.
Yeah.
There's this phrase that they say, work-life balance.
Yes.
Is it a myth? Because, we tell people to, work hard. So some people interpret it as working Sunday to Sunday. Some people interpret it as having 3, 4, 5 businesses and you're running them all at the same time. So how do we then, also considering mental health, how do we then package this in a way that people actually understand how to, what they can cope with and what they can't? Yeah.
Again, capitalism. It has made sure we give our best hours to the workforce. So we all wake up early, very fresh, we go to work. So we're giving our best hours to the office, whether it's our business or working for somebody else. By the time you're going home, yes, your kids want your attention. They are kids, right? But now imagine going back home at 5:30, 6, you are exhausted. You probably have had a crazy presentation. Clients have yelled at you. Now, what are you going to give your family? What off you are you going to give your family? And that is why work-life balance is very, very important. And I always tell corporates this. As much as you focus on doing mental health trainings to increase productivity at work, how can your employees use the same techniques at home? Because remember, they're still human. If their personal life is in shambles, your productivity is going to be affected. There is no way you're telling me my child is in the hospital and I'm coming here and my productivity levels are the same. They're not. That day they have dipped. So as a solution, what can be done is when we go and do mental health trainings in the corporate sector for companies to tell them, hey, team building, this tool, self-development, this tool. You know what we do? We simplify those tools and we tell them now use the same tool, but use it like this for your kids. And if you don't mind, I'd like to play a game with you to give an example. Are you ready?
Sure, let's
Perfect.
go.
So if God was to come down today or the universe was to decide, we are tired of you being a human being.
Oh, my.
All right?
Yeah.
Pick an animal. What animal would you pick and why?
Oh, wow. One that doesn't move too much.
And
Maybe an elephant.
An elephant.
Yeah.
Why?
I think an elephant is quite organized.
Okay.
And I think they're quite focused animals.
Focused and organized.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll give you the analysis of that. So I normally, when I was playing this game the first time, I also said elephant. And the reason I said elephant was completely different.
Okay.
I said elephant because I'm like, they roam around in herds.
Yeah.
There's uncle, auntie, cousin, mom, dad. And I find that very fascinating.
Yeah.
And the kind of analysis for that is what we find fascinating in the character is what we are trying to attract in our lives.
Oh, really?
So I want you to take some time out after the podcast and sit and think, what about being organized and being more still? The way you said you want, you know, I just want to do nothing.
Yeah.
What about that is pulling you down at the moment? Is it that you're trying to attract being organized in your space at the moment? You know, just self-reflection.
Okay.
All right. Now we play this game with corporates and communities. And a lot of the corporates will say, lion, you know, because I want to rule. And then when we tell them, what is it that you're not ruling at the moment? And they really go and analyze and see, oh, actually, I'm not being heard in my space. And that's why this character, it really attracts me. For me, I live alone. I travel alone. I hike alone. I camp alone. So when I see that aspect of family togetherness, to me, I'm like, this is fascinating. What if I had this? And that's the analysis. So when we play this game in corporates, now I'll tell you how to play it with the little ones at home.
Little ones at home.
Now, so when we ask the little ones, we ask them, if you were to have a superpower, what superpower would you have? And we get some very fascinating answers. We played with a kid once, and the child is like, oh, I wish I could just teleport myself. So like, oh, that's very interesting. Where would you like to go? So he's like, I would close my eyes in the morning. I'd be at school. When I open my eyes, I'm back home. So we laughed. We're like, oh, why would you want to just like go to school and come back with that? And we realized that this kid is picked up very early in the morning for school.
Oh, yes. The hours in traffic, early morning.
So by the time he comes home, he's so cranky, but it's due to exhaustion. And what is causing the exhaustion is just sitting in the bus.
Okay.
So you've identified exactly what exactly is bothering this child through a game.
Through a game.
But will this kid come and tell you, I can't go in the bus, I'm feeling exhausted? They might not be able to express. But now as a parent, you've realized.
You've actually picked up on something.
So have you seen how one game can help adults? Now we literally take the game and we tell them work-life balance is important. But I can't tell you to take 1 hour aside to do this at home and 1 hour. Nobody has the time. So while you're playing this small game in your meeting at work, go ask this to your child at home and now see the response. And you'll be able to really pick a lot of things. I hope you had fun with that one.
I like that. Like it's such a easy way. It's not intrusive, but makes you think as well. Makes you forthright with information.
Yes.
I like that. So just trying to, now we are trying to bring out some of the solutions that are there. What are some of healthy money habits that we could have for somebody to become like emotionally stable? What are some of the things that you'd recommend for them?
First, I would say live in your means.
Okay.
Just because somebody has traveled somewhere, just because a family member has bought a car, doesn't mean you have to rush into it. Okay. That's number one. Number two, let's focus on mindful spending. I know it's very easy to buy something from Instagram, from Facebook, very enticing. When you see somebody with a new dress, you're like, that one actually looks good on me.
Yeah.
Let's be very mindful. What is the purpose of this spending? Am I spending it wisely?
Yeah.
If I take this money and put it aside for now, how is it going to help me? Set goals. I would say we always encourage people to do self-care, right? So if you're somebody who likes to travel, how often do you want to travel? Do you want to take one trip where you're Tembe in Kenya? So you know, okay, my budget for this might be 60K for 2 or 3 days. But then I want to do an international trip probably in November. Set the way you set your goals in the beginning of the year, set those goals and build like that financially. So even when you're saving with a purpose. It's also more exciting. And I will give you my own example. When I started hiking, I had nothing, no hiking shoes, no hiking stick. But it's also very expensive to buy everything at once. So what I told myself was every time I go on a hike, I will buy one thing. And today I've been hiking for 2 years and I have all the gear. So slowly, they say, haba na haba, ujaza kibaba, just like that. So do the same with your spending. If you have a list, prioritize what comes first. Can I afford this right now? Right? We are going to Christmas, and that is when everybody wants to do everything. Fill your responsibilities out first. Pay all your bills. Make sure school fees is paid. Have you kept something aside for your kids' books before you spend? So prioritize your spending.
All right. Any final words of advice to people who may be going through financial stress right now, and this financial situation they're in, maybe words of encouragement of quick things that they could do, to also check on their mental health as well?
So one thing I'd like to tell you is that everybody gets into situations that they don't want to get into. Please do not feel alone. We are here as mental health coaches, as financial coaches, and we are here for you. Don't suffer alone. Speak up.
Speak up.
Speak up. Come seek advice. Pick your phone and give somebody a call. If you think you don't want to speak to a professional, speak to a friend. Speak to a friend who's level-headed, but don't suffer alone. Every problem comes with a solution. We just have to look for it.
Wow. Thank you so much, Sakina. This was just wonderful having you. The conversation was flawless. I just love the conversations, the journey we took and how we finally arrived at, it's about planning ahead. It's about opening up. It's about talking to people. And there's no shame that comes with that. Thank you so much for all of you who tuned into this, this episode. You've picked up some valuable lessons. And I truly believe it's time we started talking a lot more about our mental health. Where are we in terms of, our emotional stability? It's important to seek help. Don't try and figure it out by yourself. As usual, please share this episode whenever you see it. Click on the like, subscribe, share button so that a lot more people can get to see this, and you may be saving a life by doing that. Thank you so much, and see you in our next episode.
Beyond the balance sheet is where personal finance meets real impact. We shine a light on everyday Kenyans, making extraordinary money moves, proving that financial growth is possible for everyone. Subscribe and join us as we rethink investing together.